My name is Stephanie, and I live and forage on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in British Columbia. BC is a mushroom lover's dream. Fungi love moisture, humidity, airflow, and a mild temperature. So it's no surprise that BC is home to close to 25% of the world's temperate rainforest. There are countless places for mushroom picking. In comparison to other countries in the world, like Europe, there's hardly anyone out there foraging for food. But the interest in how to find, harvest, and cook local wild mushrooms has risen in the past few years. In this episode of the Shroom Boom, we're going to take a look at some of the ways that mushrooms make their way to plates in BC through hobby foragers, professional foragers, and commercial operations. These are the voices of the mushroom lovers in my community. If you want to learn about fungi and you want to learn to identify mushrooms, and you live in the greater Vancouver region, I'm going to save you some time. Vancouver Mycological Society. This organization was founded back in the 70s by a man named Paul Kroger and a bunch of other mycologists. They've been educating the public on mushrooms for a very, very long time. A perfect example is found in the Vancouver Sun in 1979 when a doctor misinformed the public that magic mushrooms increase the risk of genetic damage, brain disease, and death. No less than 15 days later does a thoughtful, educated response show up in the newspaper by Paul Kroger. He's been fighting the good fight for over 40 years. Every year they have a fall mushroom show, an event that's getting busier and busier. The entirely volunteer-run organization educates thousands of new people each year at a super fun event. It's an amazing opportunity to interact with mushrooms up close, to touch and to smell them, so that you know what you're looking for in the wild. If you're afraid of mushrooms, you are not alone. But the truth is, just as many plants can kill you as fungi can. It simply comes down to education. We fear what we don't know. The mushroom show has vendors, cooking demonstrations, live music, and dozens of mycologists available to answer any of your questions. Books, apps, and videos are great, but nothing can replace talking to a passionate human who just absolutely loves fungi. It was through the Vancouver Mycological Society that I learned about a bunch of other mushroom events in BC, Canada, and beyond. For example, I went down to the Telluride Mushroom Festival in August of last year. It was their 43rd annual year. There was music, forays, identification classes, and the famous mushroom parade. In Telluride, I met a mycologist by the name of Larry Evans who told me about the Sicamous Mushroom Festival. Just a few hours outside of Vancouver and a few weeks away, I had to go. I'm headed to the Sicamous Fungi Festival, which is in interior BC, and it's really dry. It hasn't rained in a while. I have a hard time imagining that we're going to find many mushrooms, but we're going to get out there and try. We're going to be foraging around the Revelstoke area. We'll be going out with a group of 25 people. This festival happens every year in September. It's an amazing way just to get out and learn about mushrooms. We've got some incredible mycologists that are going to help us. Yeah, let's go. All right, we are out here in the woods, just outside of Sicamous, and let's see what we can find. Now this mushroom is inedible, not poisonous, but not delicious at all. This mushroom gets parasitized by this mushroom, the lobster mushroom, and it turns into one of the most delicious edible choice mushrooms that we have through this chemical reaction that we don't totally understand very well. This is one of the best specimens I've ever found, so I'm stoked about it. Like many mushrooms, where there's one, there's more. So I bet you're gonna find way more lobsters around here. This is a lobster mushroom, but it's very old, very dark red. You can see that it's actually started to mold. This type of lobster mushroom, when it gets to this age, you do not want to eat it, not just because it's not very good, but because this is where gastrointestinal upset shows up. To show you the difference, this is a perfectly edible lobster right next to one that you did not want to touch. Okay, this is a cool one. It's poisonous. The pores on the bottom are red. The stem is red, but a really good way to tell which mushroom this is by slicing it and watching it blue. And it'll turn blue pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure this is bear's tooth. Beautiful little specimen. This guy is a Zeller's bolete. And you can tell because of the really yellow pores on the bottom. It's got a red little kind of stain at the top. And the actual stem or the stipe doesn't have any kind of like flecks or hairs, it almost looks like, on some of its comparable species. I think a little slug has been nibbling this one. If you ever feel like you're not finding mushrooms, squat down and you'd be amazed what happens when you just get closer to the ground. Now, a lot of people fight about whether or not you should be pulling mushrooms out or cutting them. But when you're identifying them, you need to see the bottom. Regardless, a study was done in Oregon that showed that cutting, pulling doesn't make a difference in terms of production. In fact, the patch that wasn't picked at all produced the least. My favorite part of a mushroom festival is the foray table, where expert mycologists identify every single mushroom that you've found in the forest and answer all of your questions. There's no ego at the foray table. There's just a bunch of mushroom nerds geeking out on the incredible fungal diversity beneath our feet. The mycologists pick up each mushroom one at a time, say its Latin name, its common name, identifying features, cool facts, funny stories, jokes, songs, and warnings. This to me is performance art at its finest. My favorite mycologists are the ones that turn the foray table into their own personal improv theater. I know what you're thinking. Okay, cool. I know how to identify a mushroom that's on a plate at a mushroom festival, but where do I go to find it? Where do I go forest shopping? The truth is that foraging for mushrooms is so much more about identifying a tree than it is identifying mushrooms. I went out 4 times before I actually found anything that I could harvest that was edible because I was in the completely wrong forest. So I'm not going to give you a pin, but I am going to take you on a little trip with me to my favorite lobster foraging spot. This is also where some chanterelles will grow. And I just want you to take a look at the environment and take in the trees that are growing and the plants that are growing and lock that in your brain so that the next time you're driving down a dirt road somewhere, you can jump out and look. Let's go. This is the last little bit of old growth in this area, and it is so special. Not only is it special because it's beautiful, but it's special because there's species of mushrooms that grow here that just simply are not abundant in other places. Some of which, like agaricon, doesn't even grow outside of old growth. This is a little bit too mushy right here for lobsties. The dopamine. Oh my God, they're everywhere. When you get down low to the ground, they are everywhere. It's one of those days where you're kind of worried to step anywhere because there's so many mushrooms around that you don't want to step on any of them. Look at that. Joy to the world. The mushrooms are here. One of the most sought after and expensive mushrooms is also one of the most elusive and, no surprise, hard to find: the pine mushroom or the Masutake. The pine mushroom has a distinct aroma. Once you smell this mushroom, you will not forget it. It is found in western North America from northern California to Alaska, and it usually grows with pine, Douglas fir, or western hemlock trees. In a 2010 review on the management of timber and pine mushrooms, it was estimated that shipments of pine mushrooms for BC to Japan range from 2 to 600,000 kilograms per year, estimated at between $8 and $42 million.
The pine market is predominantly Japanese. There are other Asian buyers, but nobody buys pine like the Japanese market.
British Columbians are also consuming Masutake, or pine mushroom, as more and more people are exposed to it through local restaurants.
I think one thing that has expanded the market is the restaurant scene itself has been growing. There's a lot more independent fine dining restaurants. The culture in Vancouver is growing. There's a lot of different types of cuisines that are now able to have representative restaurants. So I think that's a large part of it.
The buying and selling of Masutake is extremely complex. There's different prices for each growth stage of the mushroom, which they call grades. It's a very interesting industry.
Grading is difficult to manage across the entire process, from harvest to receiving it or purchasing it at the retail level. A mushroom's grade will deteriorate over time. So the grade is just the stage of development that a mushroom is in. If it's in a closed shape, the cap has not unveiled, you can't visibly see the gills of the mushroom underneath, and it's still a small button size, then it's considered a grade 1. The moment it opens, it's downgraded to a grade 2. The percentage of veil that you see determines the grade that it is. And some people grade it from 1 to 5. There are more grades. The most I had ever seen, I think, was a 14-point grade system. Another complication of grading is that mushrooms are continuously deteriorating. So you'll buy it as a 1, and then by the time it's reached the next hand, it can be a 2.
David and Oyster & King do not currently export pine mushrooms outside of Canada into Japan, but there's plenty of commercial operations that do. There's also professional foragers. Their whole career is to go out and forage for mushrooms, and a lot of these professional foragers will supply to restaurants locally, fresh product. It's ideal. It's a win-win.
When I first heard about foraging as a career, it was the year 2014, and I was in Dawson City for the summer, and the town was just flooded with mushroom pickers. They were picking morels nearby, looking all dirty and scraggly, I guess. And they were very intriguing, and they were just so much fun to hang out with. So I'd quit my job in the springtime, and yeah, it's kind of been a lot of mushrooms ever since. I think at first I was like, this is a really amazing job. Like, I would just love to be in the woods and just, wicker basket fantasy scenario. What I like most about being more small and independent than what I was before is just being able to slow down a lot, focusing on quality over quantity. I have a more intimate relationship with the product and my customer. When I was a commercial forager, I just had to focus on the most amount that I can pick. As fun as that is, and I still can have those days, it doesn't have to be always. So it really has allowed me to just hone in on the enjoyment of the foraging.
A lot of restaurants get their pine mushrooms from a commercial distributor, supplier, or a professional forager. But there's some chefs that just go out and get them on their own.
I always like the idea of like an expedition, Spending time in the woods is just the best. You feel that connection with nature, and I think that's something that we both grew up with.
Yeah, it's incredibly grounding for me. My life is so hectic in the city. When you're in the forest, there's only really one thing. The many dopamine drops of every time you find mushrooms, you're so stoked.
So everything, we love everything about it.
Everything.
Yeah, it's the best. What's not to love?
This includes Phil and Gus. Phil being the culinary director at Savio Volpe, and Gus being the executive chef at Published on Main. Published on Main is a Michelin star restaurant that is founded on serving local and in-season food in a familiar yet surprising way. Whether they showcase it on the plate or pickle and preserve it, they source food from local farms and forests. Savio Volpe is not far down the street and shares the same values and love for seasonal ingredients. I went out with Phil and Gus on a very early Saturday morning to go find some Masutake, and it was a blast.
Fairly recently. Yeah, it's pretty fresh pop. First time we met was when Phil was getting rolled on the veg station and I came in for dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know how we actually started hanging out.
We went camping.
Yeah. And then we started doing nature hikes together. And then we saw mushrooms. It's impossible to go for a hike anymore with me. I just get carried away and go off the trail and find the mushrooms, and
I haven't gone on a hike in 5 years. Not like an official hike anyways.
no.
We did one pick up in Squamish where we actually like found like chanterelles, and it was like late season, everything was frozen. Then we went into the bush and it was like still frozen, and then we went on the way out, we're like, oh, we'll just check in this one spot, and then just kind of think that like shared experience, and like
Then it was like full-blown obsession after that. But when you first can see them out in the wild and you're like, like it's right here. You come home with a bucket of mushrooms and you're like, holy shit, this is a tangible thing that I can do and brings me so much joy and happiness, and also is incredibly lucrative. It's the best thing ever.
as soon as I found like the first 2 or 3 and like you can get confident with it, I was like, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life.
Hell yeah. We got some action over here.
Pines. Beautiful, man.
Well, that's pretty nice.
Go around.
Little Masutake pine mushrooms. So fragrant. If there's 2, there's probably a few more.
Probably a few more.
The first year that we were open was also kind of pandemic time. From August till like November, I picked all the mushrooms that we served at the restaurant, which is pretty cool connection to have from me to the guest. The servers tell the guests, you know, these are chanterelles that the chef picked himself. I think like kind of brings the whole thing full circle.
Yeah, I've seen like just guest education increase, and like people know what a pine mushroom is now, where even 5 years ago it was kind of like not common knowledge. Like people knew.
No, like it was like fancy restaurants and Japanese restaurants, and that's pretty much it.
I think we make it pretty approachable. We don't make a big like song and dance about it. It's just kind of like it's the kind of mushrooms that are on the menu, and we reprint the menu every day.
Yeah, even at Published, we'll have chanterelles in like 5, 6 different places on the menu when it's like the time. The guests like are all about it. I think it's so special because you only get it for these little windows of time, and it's not something you can just pick up at the grocery store. So
There's another one here. Another one
Sure.
here too.
Do you find a taste difference between orange and white chanterelles?
No, I think the main thing is like texture. I think like the golden chanterelles have like a more nutty kind of situation, and then these guys just have such big strands of like if you cook them and roast them, they can be super meaty. Oh yeah, prime. Check out the.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like I was just like how perfect it is. Like it's just so soft, and like
Yeah.
that smell is like,
Silky.
oh, beautiful. Yeah, I just love the feeling of like being in the right place at the right time with no one else around. You're just like, this is the best. It does not get better than this.
We don't have any ownership over the land or anything, so it's just kind of like be selective as to who you bring.
like we've done a few times where I've taken like 6 or 8 or whatever of my cooks up to like a place where I know that there's like pretty diverse and there's lots of stuff we can see. And the fall's usually good because in chanterelle season there's usually like huckleberries and saskatoons or whatever else popping as well. And to have like, you know, a bit more of a grand sense of all the fun things that the forest offers.
No way.
How about that?
Amazing.
A couple of honey buttons. lately, what we've been doing at the restaurant, which is probably my favorite, is a quick little saute, but then kind of dousing them in like a dashi butter sauce. The aroma of the mushrooms really just like goes super into the sauce. We season the sauce with a bit of shiro dashi, white soy, and yuzu juice. And then we'll actually shave a bunch of fresh raw pines on top. That's not one. Yeah, it just gives you like that kind of roasty, like the nice bite, and then also the fresh. Just such a beautiful fragrance. I hated mushrooms probably until I was around 20. Because my mom just never put enough salt. And mushrooms with not enough salt are gross. If you can get people to try them again, because I've converted a lot of people back to enjoying mushrooms. Pretty much all the mushrooms are delicious. I think it's just a matter of the level of seasoning and how they're prepared. I mean, some people just have an aversion and they just like mentally can't do it. But I think you can help people bridge that gap by just preparing them well, making them delicious. Well, I mean, we have our Kentucky Fried Maitake on the menu that's been on for like 3 years now, that published. And people often think that it's chicken, which is crazy. But like, that's an approachable way for people to enjoy mushrooms that maybe wouldn't have before.
Yeah, I love that dish.
Jesus. What's the reasoning?
It's heavy. It's like 2 pounds.
It's probably more than 2 pounds.
Feel how heavy it is. There's like has its own forest.
Wow.
I must take a picture, Gus, for posterity. Nice.
You guys have like a mushroom romance, and I can see it just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone thought once we were Ryan Reynolds and Seth Rogen when we were at a restaurant. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good one. Yeah, I mean, it's just a couple dudes out in the woods hanging out.
Yeah, as you get older, it's like you kind of realize that the amount of friends isn't what is important. I think it's the quality of the time or the quality of the friends that you have. And, you know, Gus is like one of probably 4 friends I have that I really care about, and like we just have the best time out in the woods, and we support each other and check in with each other, and I think that's like a really important thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like very cathartic, like being out in the woods is like my recharging and getting to hang out with my best bud and just doing bush stuff.
Yeah.
We wrapped up the foraging day with a luxurious yet simple lunch on the beach. Phil and Gus have mastered the art of cooking in nature. I turned away for a moment to admire the view, and a kitchen was set up in the blink of an eye. Gus cleaned and sliced the Masutake, while Phil seared fresh scallops and prepared an instant miso soup. In this moment, I felt a deep gratitude for all that the land provides. It reminded me the power of having a connection of the food we consume and understanding where it comes from. In a world driven by viral trends, we must consider the potential impact on communities and ecosystems as foraging gains popularity. But the truth is that deforestation poses a greater threat to fungal diversity than any amount of foragers can. I believe that more attention, love, and appreciation towards the understory products in BC could be the key to saving our precious old-growth wilderness.